Today is August 6th, and today's quote is entitled, "Truth is simple." The truth is always simple and obvious, which is exactly why most people don't see it when it is given to them. They are looking for something complicated. You know, a realization I had a long time ago in Krishna consciousness is like, if I didn't understand something in the philosophy, I would try to come to something that I understood that relates to what I didn't understand. And usually that was a way to understand what I didn't understand, because what I wasn't understanding was actually pretty simple, but I'd made it complicated, or I thought it was complicated when it wasn't. So if I could kind of dissect it into something a little simpler based on what I already know, usually I could understand it. And it's an interesting fact of life that I've experienced in my life, that there are things that I've learned later in life which I couldn't believe I didn't know or I didn't understand when I was younger, because they were staring me in the face. So in order to grow, in order to learn, it's helpful to be observant, to be open, to always be in the frame of mind of learning. And I don't know exactly how to say it, but to be in a particular consciousness where we don't become oblivious to things which are obvious. Of course, the word obvious means everybody sees it, but the point of this quote is obvious is not always obvious. Sometimes obvious is the most unobvious, because somehow or other we're not seeing things, or we're not open, or our consciousness is in a particular space where we're just kind of looking at things in a very fixed way, and it's just, this is how we see the world, and we don't want to budge. We just know this is how the world is. It's like this, or for some people it's like this, or some people it's like this. And there's things outside that little tube that are so obvious to everybody, and they don't see it because their worldview is just like so predefined, and this is the way it is. And even when it's not that way, they see it that way because it's the only way they know how to see it. So when we see the world in a very fixed way, we're not flexible enough to see it in other ways. Sometimes obvious things are not obvious, and that also comes up in relationships, where we should obviously know what hurts a person or what makes a person happy, and we don't. One time we were hearing a class on male-female psychology and nature, and the speaker was analyzing it in depth, and he made an interesting point. He said that what I'm teaching you, and he wasn't even married, he was a sannyasi, he said, what I'm teaching you is often not even understood by men who've been married for 25 years. And I think a lot of married couples can testify that it took them years and years and years to really understand one another, or years and years to understand male-female nature. And even after being married 10, 20, 30 years, some will admit, I still don't understand it. Although it's kind of simple to understand and obvious, but somehow or other we get fixed in certain ideas and conceptions, or we get fixed in thinking this is how it's supposed to be. And even though we see it's not that way, then it's just the way we want it. We were discussing the other day about autocratic leadership, and that's an old model that used to work in societies 50, 100 years ago, when there was natural respect given to people in charge, and the people who work for them were not as qualified as them. And now today, people who are working for leaders and CEOs are often as qualified or more qualified in certain areas. So the autocratic approach doesn't work anymore, and some of those leaders still live in the dictator role, the autocratic approach, because that's what they've always done, and they think it works, and they can't see it working any other way. So to everyone else it's kind of obvious it doesn't work, but to them it's not obvious. So that's the point, that sometimes what's so obvious and simple, we don't see it because we're just in a different paradigm, a different world, different universe, different frame of reference, a different viewpoint. So we need to be a little more open and flexible, and then we'll be able to see things which are often obvious to everyone but ourselves.